Who else do we have on board today?
John Baker is here.
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Ken? How are you feeling?
Well, good, pal. I'm basically just dealing with, it turns out that the main issue is a little cracked pelvis. A little cracked pelvis. But it's basically what it is. So we know what it is, and I'm actually doing a lot of body work with it, and we're just moving it back in place, and it seems to be working fine. So thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you for the first time. So I'm feeling like I'm speaking to Manjushri or something right now. So
well, I appreciate it. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from New York as well, actually, and I'll be seeing you coming up here this week too.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. So what do you do?
I do consulting right now. I have a few different projects that I'm working on. One is the integrated health seminar. So I've been sort of one of my passions is studying health and diet and nutrition, and so I've been working on trying to put something together in that field and doing a little coaching with that. And
in diet and nutrition?
Uh-huh.
Cool. So integral health, very cool. Would love to talk a bit more about that. So anyway, go ahead. You were saying?
Recently, I've come up with this vision for like sort of a movie or a science fiction novel, sort of with integral futures and stuff. And I've been just brainstorming like crazy about all these ideas that are coming, just seemingly downloading about this. So I'm just kind of playing around with that. But mainly, I'm mostly a mystic. I spend most of my time in integral life practice and going around and meeting all the kinds of different teachers and studying and learning is my real passion. So I'm a sponge for knowledge, and it's
great for you. How old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
I'm 34.
34. Yeah, I think it's really great to see basically members at that age, that generation, if you don't mind being kind of pigeonholed, because it's a really swing age in a sense of coming off an age of being sort of a pure boomer, who would be somebody who's really, in their late 40s and 50s right now, and can be kind of expected to have an interest in these things. And then in younger generations that sometimes do and sometimes don't. So I think it's great to see, your kind of interest and your kind of orientation develop. So way to go. I mean, I think that's fantastic. What did you get your degree in?
Well, I dropped out of school. I was studying physics. I had 102 units.
I hear you.
And then I got this job selling knives in college, and then I started doing really well, and I went into management with them, and then I became a district manager for them for like 10 years, and then one day, maybe 6 years ago, I just kind of got fed up with everything and just couldn't figure out why I was so unhappy, and I got in my car and I just said I left all my property and everything I owned, and I ended up driving to Alaska, and I was like on a spiritual quest for the last.
Good for you. Good for you.
So.
And it's unfolded in a integral sort of orientation to all of this.
Oh, absolutely. I just kept I had this drive, I started reading philosophy and Alan Watts and the Tao, and I was like, where's the world philosophy? How does it all fit together? And I was already thinking, I was already like, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I can see, both sides of the issue, where's it at? And finally I found Boomeritis was actually the first book I read of yours back in summer of 2002.
Yeah.
And since that time, I read every single book you've written, listened to every single word you said, read every single book you recommended. I mean, I literally, studied with, 30 or 40 different, teachers of different. I was on Hawaii, and I was going to find every single authentic spiritual practice that you listed in one taste, and I had to do it all. And anyway.
Well, that's great. That is what happens when basically you're getting your PhD in integral studies, self-taught, which is literally tens of thousands of people around the world are doing that, and because there is no option. You can't get a degree in universities on this stuff, and you can now. We have at least 2 master's degrees at Integral University, but because of that, people really become self-taught, and we're moving to create a lot of courses at Integral University that help to kind of standardize some of this stuff so people can, if they want to read everything I've done and everything from the other handful of integral thinkers from, Aurobindo to Mike Murphy and so on have done, that's fantastic. But we also want to shake it down into a certain number of courses, and then, of course, a master's degree, and then a doctorate, so people can sort of get in and get a succinct version of all of this. But I can relate to, I think like most of us can, but most of us become dropouts from the first-tier world and struggle to find our way in some sort of self-taught, self-oriented second-tier world. And it can be very scary because you really do sort of turn your back on a lot of known landmarks and sort of head out on your own. So it sounds great. Alaska's as good a place as any. To do that, at least you get paid well for being a dishwasher up there.
I was just going to say I've been fortunate because I've always been able to fall back on selling knives whenever I,
So you have a profession. You can
right.
back on. That's great.
I've heard you speak with Andrew about a fourth-person perspective, and actually I think on the last conference call you spoke about equating turquoise as being the fifth-person perspective.
Yeah.
And I wondered, I've been wondering this for a while, how do you denote that in the integral mathematics? And maybe if you could, in third-person language, I guess you have to be at that altitude to really cognize fourth person, fifth person, sixth person, and deeper. So I wondered if you might just speak about that and
Sure.
I want to get a transmission here.
And keep in mind right at the beginning that we are, entering an area that can be very kind of complex, and there are just a lot of different ways that you can proceed here, and they're equivalent ways. So you have to just kind of say what each term means and kind of define it as you go along. And we certainly find that when it comes to even what third person, 3-P, what third person, and I'm going to say the hyphens, and for reasons you'll see now it's important, what a third hyphen person approach means. In psychological literature, there's a little bit of disagreement on that, let alone what a fifth hyphen person perspective means. And let me also point out that a third hyphen person perspective is different than being a third person. So, so we can have, a third person can come in the room. So you and I are talking. And if I'm talking to you, I'm first person, and the person being spoken to is second person. So in this case, John is second person. And we're talking about Billy Bob, and the person or thing being spoken about is defined as the third person. So you and I are talking, the two of us are talking in a room, in comes Billy Bob, he's the third person. Now somebody else can come in, they're the fourth person, somebody else can come in, they're the fifth person, somebody else can come in, they're the sixth, somebody else the seventh, somebody else the 10th. If you have 20 people in a room, you have 20 persons, that's the 20th person. But you don't have a 20th person perspective. So even if we bring in a third person into the room, Billy Bob comes in, Billy Bob might only be developed to read. He might not be capable of anything other than a first hyphen person perspective. He might just have to be a first person perspective. So the fact that you bring a third person in doesn't mean that they have a particular type of perspective. That third person might just have a first hyphen P, a first person perspective. And I might be talking to you, and you might be a turquoise, you might have a fifth person perspective. You're the second person by definition, the person being spoken to. But you don't therefore only have a second person perspective. So let's keep that in mind first of all. There's a difference between a 3P and a 3-P. Mm-hmm. And and a 4P and a 4-P. And between a 2P and a 2-P and so on. So now generally then what the hyphens is what we're talking about. What does a 3-P mean, a 4-P mean, and a 5-P? What do those mean specifically is the